What's up YouTube? This is Russell from Russell's Reef coming to you with episode 15 of the Waterbox 70.3 build. In this episode we're going to go over some new additions as far as corals. Fish are all the same, but I did pick up a couple corals, so we'll go over those. And then the main thing I want to go over is just water chemistry. I'm transitioning from kalk water to 2-part, so just want to tell you guys how that's been going, and that's about it. So thanks for tuning in. Let's take a look.
So just like the title says, I added a little bit of fire to the tank. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was able to pick up this brand new torch coral. It's an Indo torch. I'm not really sure what they call it. I think just pink tip maybe. I got it from a local reefer here in San Diego. I had been bothering him since I saw his tank for the first time, asked him to frag it, and he was finally able to cut up some heads. So that's my newest piece in there. I love it. It's pretty awesome. As far as my tank goes, there's not much movement aside from the fish, so getting some torches and other euphyllia in there will really make it a little bit more dynamic to look at. So as you can see, I can just stare at it for hours. It's so cool. And since it's been in the tank, it's been doing really well. I just kind of put it down there on the sand. I don't spot feed or anything, but as you can see, it looks pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with it. I just have to make sure that my emerald crab doesn't touch it or start eating it like he did to my Gonopora. So hopefully I'll be able to catch that emerald crab before he does any damage. But yeah, I'm really digging this coral. I think it is very, very cool. So very excited about that one. If you've been following along, you know I've been battling all sorts of different algae. Pretty typical of a new setup. But for the last, I'd say 2 months, maybe even 2.5 months, I've been dealing with green hair algae. Green hair algae is definitely my favorite algae to have a problem with, because if I wanted to, I could get rid of it in a week, but I've been taking it very, very slowly. So I did add a GFO. I think it's Roaphos. I use about maybe a quarter of the recommended amount, and I just lay it in the sump. I did notice a difference, but to be honest, every time I see the hair algae start to die off, I up my feeding because I'm so worried about losing my SPS. So the hair algae will get weak, and I can see that there's not much algae growing, and every time that happens, pretty much I'll just start feeding more reefroids and amino acids, and then it'll just come back, which isn't a big deal. But over the last, I'd say, week or so, I spot treated with some hydrogen peroxide, and since then a lot of the hair algae has died off. So the tank is looking super good right now. There's still definitely a bunch of spots of hair algae, but it's mainly in the back of the display, so it doesn't really bother me. One thing that the Roaphos has done a great job eliminating is all of the algae that was growing on the sand bed. I have a very coarse sand bed, so I was growing algae all over it, and it was actually really ugly, and I was debating whether I should take the sand out completely. But since adding the Roaphos and the Tomanitang, the sand bed has looked much better, so that's great news. Another thing you can see is the coralline algae is definitely taking off. All the rocks have a little bit of purple, and the one piece of live rock that I have is fully purple, and it wasn't like that when I got it. It had purple on one side of it, but the side that is facing the light in my tank was completely white, and now it has that thick coralline algae. It's this rock right here with all the holes in it. So that rock was covered with hair algae for about a month, and now it's just pretty clean and bright purple. So that is awesome news. And then moving on to the topic of this video, which is water chemistry. So I set up the tank using kalk wasser in my auto top off. Kalk wasser in your auto top off is great because it'll always keep up with demand, and it's really, really easy to do. All you do is add a teaspoon of kalk wasser to your ATO per gallon, and then it does the rest. My parameters were super stable, just using kalk wasser for, I don't know, I'd say the first 4 months of the tank, so it did a great job. My only complaint really is how messy it is. So my ATO reservoir is so dirty. I mean, it's full, the kalk wasser doesn't fully dissolve, so it makes a sludge on the bottom and it just gets all over the place. It ruins your pumps, it'll ruin the tubing going into the ATO and feeding the ATO, and it's just really messy. So I definitely wanted to transition away from that once I was ready, and once the kalk alone could no longer keep up with the alkalinity consumption in my tank, I knew it was time to switch over. So what I did was stop adding kalk to my ATO reservoir, and even though I wasn't adding kalk, there was still a huge amount of sludge on the bottom of the reservoir. So the water is still saturated, but every time I add more water, it's less and less saturated. And while I was doing that, I was just measuring my alkalinity every day and then dosing 2-part accordingly. So at first I started off just dosing about 5 mLs of 2-part every day. And then it's been about, I'd say, 2 weeks since I stopped adding kalk, and I'm up to about 20 mLs of 2-part every day. So it's definitely getting away from the kalk and just going full 2-part is the goal, just so I can have basically a cleaner setup, and it's really one less thing that can go wrong. I mean, now if my ATO gets stuck on, it'll just dump fresh water into the tank, and I'll have like a tiny salinity swing in the tank. It won't crash it and raise the pH to like 10 or whatever would happen and kill the tank. Because if that happens with fully saturated kalk water and you dump like 2 gallons in there, it's probably going to crash the tank. So I really wanted to stop using the kalk just to make things cleaner basically, and it's just really one less thing to worry about. And since I've been doing this, well actually kind of before, probably like the last 3, maybe 3.5 weeks, I've really seen a lot of the SPS start to take off. Whenever you get new SPS, it's kind of that waiting game. You want them to keep their color and stay alive until they start to take off. And for me, that's happening with most of my frags. They're holding their color for the first 2 months I had them, but not really growing crazy at all. And I'd say over the last 2 or 3 weeks, they're really starting to take off. So all their bases are encrusting on the rocks, and from day to day I can see noticeable differences. So that's super exciting. I think that's definitely my favorite part of having a reef tank, is watching SPS coral encrust and grow and change, because you never know what's going to happen. You can start off as like just one stick, and then it'll turn into a table, or it'll branch. You never know, and it's just so cool to watch. So I'm very excited that that is starting to happen with a lot of my frags. My Walt Disney is definitely starting to take off, and then as you can see, everything is just getting a little bigger and growing. So we're definitely on the right track. It's just a matter of, can we stay on track and nothing happen? That's the main thing. Just as long as we don't have any crashes or major events, I think we should be fine. And then one more addition that I forgot about. So here in California, we've been going through a lot of semi-planned power outages. So whenever there's a high fire warning, they're just cutting the power in certain areas. So I had a couple scares without any battery backup or anything. My power went off when I was on my way home from work, but luckily it came back on within like 30 minutes. So I ended up ordering the Vortec battery backup system and got that plugged in. So far so good. I mean, it seems like it'll be pretty good. It'll do the job. Hopefully I don't have to use it, but just having that peace of mind is well worth it. And that's about all I got for today. Thank you for tuning in. Next episode, I'm going to go over automating the tank. So finally setting up my 2-part Jabo doser. So hopefully I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. All right.